Counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Chacon, you mentioned to the jury someone named Qasim Abdul, right?
Yes, sir.
And was Qasim Abdul someone you worked with at Neverland?
Yes.
And I believe you told the jury that he was the first person you talked to about your claim that Mr. Jackson was molesting young men, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Qasim Abdul joined you in that lawsuit against Mr. Jackson, correct?
Yes, sir.
Qasim Abdul also had a judgment against him in favor of Mr. Jackson for $1,473,117.61, correct?
I believe so, sir, yes.
Qasim Abdul joined you in trying to get millions from Mr. Jackson, right?
Object as argumentative, Your Honor.
Overruled. You may answer.
Is that correct?
No, sir. No, sir.
Oh, he didn't?
No, sir.
He wasn't a plaintiff with you in that case?
Oh, he was, yes, sir.
You're saying that Mr. Abdul was not looking for millions like you?
No, sir.
How much did he want, Mr. Chacon?
There wasn't an amount, sir.
After a 6-month trial, your lawyer didn't ask the jury to award an amount for you, sir?
You'll have to ask Mr. Ring.
You were sitting there, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Did you hear him give a closing argument to the jury?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Argumentative.
Sustained.
Are you telling this jury today, under oath, you don't know how much your lawyer asked for in that 6-month trial?
I saw it earlier when you showed.
Excuse me. I'm going to object as argumentative and immaterial.
Sustained.
There was also someone named Adrian McManus who joined you in suing Mr. Jackson, correct?
Yes, sir.
And Adrian McManus had worked at Neverland, right?
That's correct, sir.
And like you and Mr. Abdul, she lost the case, correct?
Yes, sir.
A Santa Maria jury ruled against her as well, right?
That's correct.
Now, Adrian McManus was also found to have stolen property from Mr. Jackson, true?
No, sir.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you the judgment?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I'm going to object as immaterial with regard to this witness's testimony. Beyond his knowledge, no foundation.
Sustained.
When did you last talk to Adrian McManus?
Probably months ago.
Did you talk about this case at all?
Only if I knew when I was coming down, and how she was doing.
Is that all you discussed about this case?
Yes, sir.
How long was the conversation?
Oh, couldn't have lasted more than 5 minutes, because she was at work.
When did you last talk to Qasim Abdul?
I have not, sir, at all.
Not at all?
No.
Okay, when's the last time you talked to him?
Probably the time when we left court here. Back then.
Okay, alright. Now, when you sued Mr. Jackson, you had judgments against you in other cases, true?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as immaterial.
Sustained.
When you sued Mr. Jackson, the wages you were getting from Mr. Jackson were being partially garnished, correct?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Same objection.
Financial motive, Your Honor.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
They were being garnished because you wouldn't pay child support, true?
I was paying child support, sir.
Then why were they garnished?
I assume that's the procedure they do when they want child support from you.
You couldn't just send a check yourself?
I'm going to object to that.
Sustained. Calls for a legal conclusion.
At one point, you asked a Santa Barbara sheriff for money, true?
I don't recall, sir.
Do you recall ever asking Mr. Burchim for some money?
No, sir.
Are you saying it never happened?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay, when did you last talk to Russ Burchim?
This morning.
Where did you talk to him?
Here at the courthouse.
Did you talk about your testimony?
No, sir.
Okay, so you're not denying that you asked him for money and you're not denying he gave it to you. You just don't remember, right?
I don't recall, sir.
When did you first meet Russ Burchim?
I believe it was back in 93, I believe. I'm not sure.
Ever hear of a company called Commercial Trade?
No, sir.
You didn't have a lawsuit with Commercial Trade in 1989?
Object as immaterial.
Sustained.
Do you know someone named Judge Bird?
No, sir.
Judge Bird had a judgment against you for a couple $1,000, didn't she?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this and ask the court to admonish counsel.
It's all part of the financial motive, Your Honor.
There's no time frame. The problem you're asking about is when. I don't know that, so I'll sustain the objection on vagueness.
At the time you sued Mr. Jackson for an amount you don't remember, isn't it true you had a judgment against you for $2,600 by a Ms. Judge Bird?
I don't recall, sir.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you your deposition where you talked about it?
Yes, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Oh, yes, sir.
Have you had a chance to look at that deposition page?
Yes, sir.
Did it refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir.
Do you know who Judge Bird is?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know anything about a judgment she ever had against you?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, when did you first tell Qasim Abdul, your co-plaintiff against Mr. Jackson, about this alleged molestation you witnessed?
Probably when we knew that we were going to be subpoenaed to the grand jury.
And approximately when was that?
I believe it was in 94 sometime.
By the way, do you remember testifying that Sheriff Russ Burchim delivered money to you?
I don't recall, sir.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you your deposition?
Yes, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
It's down there, but I don't recall that, sir, at all.
Okay. Do you recall saying it?
No, sir, I don't.
Don't recall anything about it?
No, sir.
Okay. It just is down there, right?
I'm going to object to the comment as argumentative.
Sustained.
Do you remember testifying under oath you asked Mr. Burchim for money?
I don't recall, sir.
That's been asked and answered.
Sustained.
Do you remember asking for money so your wife could relocate?
Probably so, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you remember wanting other bills paid?
No, sir.
Okay. How long after you told Qasim Abdul, your co-plaintiff, about these alleged acts of molestation did you speak to anyone from law enforcement?
I don't recall, sir.
Was it years?
Oh, no, not years.
How long was it?
Could have been weeks, days. I'm not certain, sir. It's been a while.
Did you review any documents to get ready to testify today?
No, sir.
Anyone send you any documents to look at?
No.
Before you testified today?
No, sir.
When did you last talk to Mr. Ring about your suit against Mr. Jackson?
I haven't talked to Mr. Ring in years, sir.
Okay, alright. Now, at the time you filed your lawsuit against Mr. Jackson, you knew that other former employees at Neverland had sold stories to tabloids about Mr. Jackson, didn't you?
Could you rephrase that, sir?
Sure. At the time you filed your lawsuit against Mr. Jackson, you were aware that other former employees at Neverland had sold stories to tabloids, correct?
I don't understand the others, sir. Which others?
Blanca Francia?
No, sir.
Never heard of it?
Oh, yes, I heard of it. But I wasn't aware of that.
Were you aware of anyone else at Neverland who was employed at one point trying to go to a tabloid to sell a story?
No, sir.
Never heard anything about it?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever hear anything about Adrian McManus doing that?
Well, we went to a tabloid.
Which one?
It was the Star.
And who was we?
It was myself, Adrian McManus, Qasim Abdul, and I guess that was it.
And approximately when did you go to this tabloid?
We had met at Mr. Ring's office in Santa Barbara.
And after you met with your attorney, who represented you in the lawsuit, you went to a tabloid, correct?
Right. Yes, sir.
And you wanted money for a story, true?
Yes, sir.
Who did you meet with at the tabloid when you requested money?
Can you rephrase that, sir?
Yes, sir. Who did you meet with when you went to a tabloid to request money?
Oh, there was myself, Kasim, Adrian, and whoever the reporter was, and Mr. Ring.
Your lawyer was there with you, right?
Yes, sir.
You did it with your lawyer because you thought that negative publicity would pressure Mr. Jackson into paying all of you money, right?
No.
Object as argumentative, Your Honor.
Overruled. The answer was, no. Next question.
You went to the tabloid before the case was tried to a jury, right?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Had you filed a case before you went to the tabloid?
I don't recall, but I believe so, sir.
Did you sell a story to the tabloid?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever hire a broker to help you sell other stories to other tabloids?
No, sir.
Did you ever hear anything about McManus doing that?
No, sir.
Okay. What other tabloids did you speak to?
None, sir.
Just one?
Yes, sir.
Just Star?
Yes, sir.
But you were aware that McManus went to other tabloids, true?
No, sir.
Just Star?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever speak to anyone at Inside Edition?
No, sir.
Okay. How about any other newspaper?
No, sir.
Now, you wanted to sell information about Mr. Jackson allegedly acting wrongfully with young men, correct?
Yes, sir. To the Star.
And you also wanted to sell information about his relationship with Lisa Marie Presley, correct?
No, sir.
Never did that?
No, sir.
Ever hear of any of your co-plaintiffs doing that?
That I recall. I don't recall, sir.
Don't recall it at all?
No, sir.
Okay. Was your story printed, to your knowledge?
Yes, sir.
Approximately when did that happen?
I don't know the date, sir.
Any idea at all?
No, sir.
Okay. Can't even estimate, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Alright. How long after you told your co-plaintiff against Mr. Jackson, Mr. Qasim Abdul, about these alleged acts of molestation did you both go to a tabloid?
Oh, it wasn't right away. But I don't recall when it was.
Okay. It was before you went to law enforcement, wasn't it?
No, sir.
Was it after it?
I believe so, sir. I don't recall.
Okay. Mr. Chacon, in late 93 and early 94, you told other people that Michael Jackson was innocent of molestation accusations, didn't you?
No, sir.
Never told that to anyone at the ranch?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you familiar with a tabloid called Splash?
Yes, sir.
What is Splash?
I believe it's a tabloid.
Ever met with someone named Peter Burt from Splash?
I don't recall, sir.
Are you saying you don't recall? You didn't?
I don't remember, sir, if I did or not.
So you could have, but you don't remember?
Could have, but I don't remember.
Okay. Do you know somebody named Sandy Doms?
Yes, sir.
Who was Sandy Doms?
She was one of the secretaries at Neverland Ranch.
Okay. Do you recall Sandy Doms ever approaching a tabloid?
No, sir.
Don't know anything about it?
No, sir.
Alright. Do you recall speaking to a book author named Gutierrez?
Yes, sir.
And approximately when did you speak to a book author named Gutierrez?
I believe that was before we went to Star, but I don't remember the date or the time.
Okay. Do you remember splitting money from any tabloids with any other employees or former employees of Neverland?
No, sir.
You never split money for giving information to a TV show called Inside Edition?
That I recall, no, sir.
So you're not telling the jury you didn't do it, you're just saying, I don't recall.
Well, I don't think I did it or we did it, no, sir.
You don't know for sure?
I just don't recall if we did or not, sir.
You might have, but you don't remember, right?
I don't remember.
Did you ever complain at Neverland that you should be paid more money than you were getting?
No, sir.
Do you remember filing a claim for disability with Ed after you left Neverland?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you saying that didn't happen?
Well, I filed for unemployment.
Not disability?
No, sir.
Alright. When is the last time you worked at Neverland? Do you know?
It's probably mid-94, I believe, or around there.
Now, when you sued Mr. Jackson in Santa Maria, you also sued other people at Neverland, right?
No, sir.
You sued James Van Norman, didn't you?
Oh, yes, sir.
You sued Tony Coleman?
Yes.
You sued Marcus Johnson, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you sued Bill Bray, right?
Yes, sir.
And Betty Bailey, right?
Yes, sir.
And Andrew Merritt, right?
I believe so, yes, sir.
And you were claiming that they had wrongfully interfered with your employment, correct?
Yes, sir, they did.
And are these some of the people that you described as being bodyguards for Mr. Jackson?
Yes, sir, the OS.
Yes.
Yes.
You didn't like the OS being at Neverland, did you?
No, sir.
You wanted to handle all of the security yourself, correct?
Well, there was a time that I was in charge, and I knew what I was doing, sir.
And you felt they didn't, right?
Well, they shouldn't have interfered with my job.
Okay. And obviously you lost that claim in front of a Santa Maria jury, correct?
Yes.
Object as argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
The claims against the people in addition to Mr. Jackson who had worked at Neverland, you lost those claims, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, at the time you sued Mr. Jackson, you had complained that you couldn't pay your rent, right?
No, sir.
Did you ever complain to anyone you couldn't pay your rent?
No, sir.
Never complained to any sheriff, right?
I don't recall. I don't think so, sir.
Okay, but you don't know for sure?
No, sir.
Alright. Now, when Mr. Jackson sued you for stealing his property, do you recall what property he was accusing you of stealing from him?
Yes, sir.
What was the property?
It was candy bars from the theater. And the other stuff I'm not sure of, but I believe they were referring to my briefcase that had memos, my personal memos from my box at the security office.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Now, the jury found that the material you stole was worth $25,000, correct?
No, sir.
Well, they entered a judgment against you for $25,000 for maliciously converting Mr. Jackson's property, true?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this.
Sustained.
Do you know what the amount was, Mr. Chacon?
I'm going to object. It's the same question, just asked a different way.
Sustained.
You were found to have stolen documents from Mr. Jackson, true?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Asked and answered.
I don't think it is.
That question hasn't been asked. But the ruling that I made is that the issues that you can go into are not the issues of the lawsuit. It's the same as the J.C. Penney case. You can go into what he said, what he hasn't said, the same exact ruling, and you're.
Okay.
The area you're in now has to do with the issues in the lawsuit. So I want you. That's the line we're trying to walk here.
Okay, I'll move on, Your Honor. Do you know someone named Linda Allen, Mr. Chacon?
Yes, sir.
Who is Linda Allen?
She was my landlady in Lompoc.
For how long?
Probably about a year. I'm not for certain of the length of time.
When you were suing Mr. Jackson, you told Linda Allen you would soon be able to pay her the back rent you owed, right?
No, sir.
I'm going to object to that question. The same 403 ruling.
Overruled.
Did you do that, Mr. Chacon?
No, sir.
Did you ever tell Linda Allen, I'm going to be a star witness against Michael Jackson?
No, sir.
Okay. Ever tell Linda Allen you were going to be on the TV show Hard Copy to talk about Mr. Jackson?
No, sir.
Did you ever tell Linda Allen you had a gun permit because you were a star witness against Michael Jackson?
No, sir.
Ever tell Ms. Allen you were going to make $2 or $3 million with your suit against Mr. Jackson?
No, sir.
Ever will tell Linda Allen you were going to be driving a 450 Mercedes after you won your suit against Mr. Jackson?
No, sir.
Alright, none of that rings a bell, right?
No, no.
Okay, now, in your meeting with the first tabloid that you talked to, okay, where Abdul was present, who else was there?
I believe Adrian McManus, Abdul, myself, Mr. Ring, and whoever represented that tabloid. I don't know, sir.
Who arranged the meeting?
Mr. Ring.
Okay, do you know someone named Gary Morgan?
I've heard the name before, yes, sir.
Where have you heard the name?
Probably, maybe he's the one that represented the tabloid. I'm not sure.
Okay, did you ever talk to Gary Morgan?
I probably did, but I don't recall.
Okay, do you recall ever being interviewed by someone who claimed to be a media broker, meaning they could actually get you to various tabloids on TV or in print?
No, sir.
Never heard of anything about that, right?
No, sir.
Did you draft a story for the tabloids at Mr. Ring's office?
Probably, yes, sir. Probably did. I don't recall, but I probably did.
Why do you say you probably did?
Because it's kind of vague. It's been a long time, and I guess I did. I would say I did. Yes, sir.
Well, it hasn't been much longer than the period of time you claim you remember these events about Mr. Jackson, true?
Well, I probably did, sir, draft that.
Probably did. Are you did?
I did.
It's argumentative.
Overruled. The answer was he did. Next question.
Okay, and did you draft a story for Splash?
I believe that was the tabloid, sir.
Okay, and after you drafted it, did you meet with somebody from Splash?
Whoever it was. I don't recall, sir.
Were you personally interviewed by somebody from Splash?
We all were, sir.
Jointly or individually?
Jointly.
Okay, how long was the interview with Splash?
Could have been an hour or so. I'm not for certain how long.
Do you recall telling anyone that you were using the money from Splash to help fund your lawsuit against Michael Jackson?
Yes, the money went directly to Mr. Ring.
And that was approximately $17,000, wasn't it?
I don't know, sir. But whatever it was, he did get it.
So can you estimate what it was?
I can't, sir.
Okay, did you get any money yourself as?
No, sir.
Do you remember telling people you gave most of it to Mr. Ring, but you took about $500 yourself?
Well, we had taken $500, but we gave it back to Mr. Ring, because he was our lawyer and he needed money.
Okay, that was to fund the lawsuit where you sought millions from Michael Jackson, correct?
Well, that was the lawsuit, sir.
That was the lawsuit you were trying to fund by selling stories to tabloids, true?
No, sir.
No?
I really don't understand your question.
Sure. I'll rephrase. You were taking money from tabloids and using it to fund costs of your lawsuit against Mr. Jackson?
Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
And before you went to Mr. Ring, you had told various people that you never saw anything inappropriate at Neverland, true?
No, sir.
You told various people you'd never seen Michael Jackson molest anybody, true?
No, sir.
So if anybody comes into court and says that, they're just not telling the truth, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, when you first met with representatives of the sheriff's department, did you tell them everything that you have said today about Mr. Jackson allegedly molesting young men?
When you mean a certain sheriff, or at the sheriff's department, or, I don't understand.
Let me rephrase. When you first spoke to a sheriff from Santa Barbara, did you tell that sheriff everything you've said today in court?
No, sir.
The story has changed considerably since your first meeting with a sheriff, true?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the use of the word considerably as argumentative.
Sustained.
Would you agree that with each interview you do, you add more lurid facts about Mr. Jackson?
No, sir.
You would agree your story about what you claim he did has changed through the years, has it not?
No, sir.
Didn't you just meet with Mr. Sneddon the other day?
Yes, sir.
Didn't you tell Mr. Sneddon you had new facts that you forgot in 1993?
Well, wait a minute. I'm going to object to that question. Your Honor, that's not asked in good faith with regard to the I can't do it without a speaking objection But if we could approach the bench, because this is not right.
Overruled. The question was, did you tell Mr. Sneddon you had new facts that you had forgot in 1993?
Yes, I did.
You told Mr. Sneddon that you forgot to say certain things in 1993 about Mr. Jackson allegedly molesting young men, true?
Yes, sir.
But now you remembered them in 2005, right?
Vaguely, yes, sir.
And you said the person that remembered them with you is Qasim Abdul, true?
I haven't talked to Qasim in years.
Okay. When did you first start work at Neverland, Mr. Chacon?
I believe it was in 91, sir.
Okay. You knew that in late 93 and early 94, the media was devoting a lot of attention to stories about Mr. Jackson at Neverland, correct?
Well, the media was always at Neverland at some time or other, sir.
Before you chose to go to a tabloid, you knew that others were going to tabloids to try and tell stories about Mr. Jackson?
No, sir.
You were the first, right?
That went to the media, to the tabloids?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And when did you go?
It was probably 94 sometime.
But you knew there was a lot of media attention before that, correct?
There always has been, sir.
And you knew people were making money doing that, right?
No, sir.
Weren't aware of that?
No, sir.
Thought they were doing it all for free, right, Mr. Chacon?
No, sir.
Object as argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Do you think Mr. Jackson is an intimidating-looking individual?
No, sir.
Do you remember in your deposition you said you were entitled to damages because Mr. Jackson stared at you?
No, sir.
Remember you said Mr. Jackson stared, and you didn't know how to take it?
No, sir.
Would it refresh your recollection if I show you your deposition?
Yes, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay, I remember.
As part of your damage claim, do you remember saying that Mr. Jackson stared at you continuously?
Not continuously, sir.
Well, you said, all the time, right?
No, sir.
You said no one else saw him staring at you, right?
No, sir.
But it bothered you, right?
No, sir.
Okay, why did you say it?
I guess just to say it.
Okay, as part of your damage claim, you claimed that employees were threatening you at Neverland, right?
Yes, they were, sir.
Alright, and the jury didn't believe that, did they?
All object as argumentative.
Sustained.
When did you start working the graveyard shift at Neverland?
Immediately, sir, when I got hired on.
Didn't you gradually work your way into that?
Immediately I went to the graveyard. Then they shifted me to swings for a while, probably a month or so, and then I ended back on graveyard. As a matter of fact, I preferred to work graveyard, sir, because I had a second job.
Where was the second job?
In Lompoc.
What was that?
I worked for Wayne's Tires.
Do you remember problems with intruders while you worked at Neverland?
Yes, sir.
And what problems with intruders do you remember?
Them coming on property and we turned them over to the sheriff's department.
And how often do you remember that happening?
Probably several times, sir.
Do you recall Mr. Jackson getting nervous about that?
No, sir.
Did he seem to care about it, to you?
He wasn't even there when we apprehended the people.
He certainly learned about it, to your knowledge, correct?
I don't know, sir.
You never talked to him about it?
No, sir.
And you were not aware of anyone else telling Mr. Jackson about these problems with intruders?
No, sir.
Alright, sir. Mr. Jackson had some personal security guards because he was worried about these intruders being caught on the property, right?
I don't believe so, sir.
You and the other security people didn't carry any weapons, right?
No, sir, we didn't.
And at times, that was a concern of Mr. Jackson's, wasn't it? That his security personnel there didn't have any weapon to protect him?
I don't know, sir.
He had a general policy of not wanting people to carry weapons, true?
I don't know, sir.
You don't know at all?
No, sir.
Did you ever see any of your security team carrying a weapon?
No, sir.
Did you know why?
No, sir.
Had no idea at all?
No, sir.
Never inquired?
No, sir.
When you first joined up, did you ask anybody, do security people carry weapons at Neverland?
No, sir.
Were you given any manual to refer to when you worked at Neverland?
Yes, sir.
And what do you know about that manual?
I'm going to object. Vague.
Sustained.
It's vague. I'll rephrase. Are you telling the jury that when you started working security at Neverland, nobody told you, we have a general policy of having security people not carry arms?
Well, probably so, because nobody was carrying arms.
Did you have a gun permit at the time?
No, sir.
How many meetings did you have with representatives of the sheriff's department before you think you told all the facts about what you say Mr. Jackson did with young men?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as argumentative, assumes facts.
Calls for a narrative. You can break that question down.
Sure. When was your first meeting with any representative of the sheriff's department regarding what you claim you saw at Neverland?
I don't recall, sir.
Do you know approximately when it was?
No, sir, I don't.
Was it after you saw the events you described today?
I don't recall, sir.
Well, you've given the jury a detailed description of the events you claim you saw at Neverland, right?
Yes, sir.
But you've forgotten when you talked to the sheriffs, correct?
Well, I know I talked to them, but I just don't recall exactly when it was sir.
Do you know approximately when it was at?
It was in 94, I believe, sometime.
Do you know how many meetings you've had with the sheriffs to date where you have talked about Mr. Jackson's inappropriate behavior?
Well, with the sheriffs, I didn't talk about the allegations. But with the grand jury, which I went to testify, that was the first time, and there was sheriffs present there.
You testified before a Santa Barbara grand jury, right?
Yes, sir.
And after you testified, no criminal charges were brought, right?
Right, sir.
You went to Los Angeles and talked to prosecutors.
No, sir.
About what you claim, you never did that.
No, sir.
Didn't you tell Mr. Sneddon on direct examination that you were subpoenaed to a grand jury in Los Angeles?
Oh, yes, sir. But I didn't go.
You didn't go, but you went down to be interviewed under oath instead of going, true?
Yes, sir.
And as a result of your interview under oath, no charges were ever brought in Los Angeles, right?
No, sir.
Do you remember testifying how upset you were at Neverland when you learned that other employees got raises and you didn't?
Yes, I believe there was one time.
And tell the jury what that was all about.
Probably they had hired 2 or 3 security, and I believe they paid them $12 an hour, and we were only getting $9 an hour.
And did you complain about it to somebody?
Oh, yes, I did.
Who?
Probably the lieutenant.
And what happened?
Nothing ever happened.
Was Mr. Abdul upset about that also, to your knowledge?
I believe so, yes, sir.
And you and he met and talked about it, right?
Pardon me?
You and he met and talked about it, correct?
Well, we all talked about that in security.
You lodged a complaint, didn't you?
No, sir.
Did you think Mr. Jackson's security guards were being paid more than you?
The new ones, yes, sir.
How did you know what they were getting paid?
I don't remember. I don't recall, sir, how we found out.
When you told the jury you saw a young boy on Mr. Jackson's back, was that in the shower?
No, it was coming out, going towards his house.
Was he on his shoulders?
You know, I don't recall if he was on his shoulders or on his back, like piggybacked, yes, sir.
When you went to work at Neverland, you were asked to sign a confidentiality agreement, right?
Yes, sir.
And everybody who works at Neverland is asked to sign one, right?
Yes, sir.
And the purpose, as explained to you, was that Mr. Jackson doesn't want employees just running to tabloids and telling stories, right?
Yes, sir, I believe so.
When you went to a tabloid, you violated the agreement, correct?
Object. Your Honor, calls for a legal conclusion.
Overruled. You may answer.
No, sir.
You didn't violate at all?
No, sir.
So you thought going to a tabloid after you left your employment at Neverland was perfectly consistent with your confidentiality obligations to Mr. Jackson, right?
I don't think I ever signed a confidentiality, sir.
Sure about that?
I'm not for certain, but I don't recall that I ever did.
Weren't you asked to?
I probably was, but at that time they didn't have one for me.
At the time you and Mr. Abdul and Ms. McManus and your lawyer went to the tabloid, your lawyer was trying to negotiate to get money from Mr. Jackson, wasn't he?
I'm going to object. Lack of foundation, and it assumes.
Foundation. Sustained.
At the time you and Mr. Abdul and Ms. McManus and your lawyer went to a tabloid to give a story about Mr. Jackson. Do you know whether or not your lawyer was trying to negotiate money from Mr. Jackson?
No, sir.
Do you know whether or not your lawyer was trying to pressure Mr. Jackson by threatening bad publicity?
No, sir.
Did you ever hear of anything like that going on?
No, sir.
Okay, so if that went on, you'd be shocked, true?
Probably not, sir.
Probably not?
I guess not, no.
Did you ever explain to Mr. Jackson yourself that you were having trouble making ends meet financially?
No, sir.
Did you explain to anyone at Neverland about that before you left?
No, sir.
All right, without getting into any of your discussions with your lawyer, who of your group first went to that attorney?
Which attorney, sir?
Ring. Mr. Ring.
Who first went to Mr. Ring?
Yes.
Of us?
Of you. Excuse me. Let me rephrase the question. Make it clearer. You, Mr. Abdul, Ms. McManus sued Mr. Jackson, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were represented by a lawyer in Santa Barbara named Mr. Ring, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he represented you throughout that 6-month trial that you lost, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who first approached Mr. Ring about trying to get money from Mr. Jackson?
We all did, sir.
Together?
We hired him, yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know how you found out about him?
I don't recall, sir.
Was he the only lawyer you talked to, or did you talk to some others?
I believe he was the only one we talked to, yes, sir.
Do you recall whether you ever told anyone, Mr. Jackson promised me if I did a good job, I would have a job at Neverland forever?
No, sir.
Did he ever say anything like that to you?
No, sir.
Did anyone who hired you at Neverland?
No, sir.
Okay. You met with Prosecutor Sneddon on April 6, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was anyone else at the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Who?
Russ Burchim.
Where did the meeting take place?
Here in Santa Maria.
And who arranged the meeting?
I believe it was Mr. Sneddon.
Did he call you on the phone?
Yes, sir.
Did he tell you where to meet?
Yes, sir.
How long was the meeting?
Probably less than an hour.
Did you discuss anything you were going to say today?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Did Mr. Sneddon tell you what questions he was going to ask you today?
Yes, sir.
Did you tell him what answers you were going to give to those questions?
No, sir.
Did you tell him anything about how you were going to respond?
I just told him that I would speak the truth.
That's it?
Yes, sir.
How long was the meeting?
Probably about less than an hour.
So during the portion of that hour that you spoke, all you ever said was, "I'll tell the truth, I'll tell the truth, I'll tell the truth," or words to that effect.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. He told you what questions he was going to ask you, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
You told him what your responses were going to be, right?
Yes, sir.
When was excuse me. Before that meeting, when was the last time you had met with anyone from the prosecuting office here?
I didn't meet with anybody.
Did you talk with anyone on the phone?
Yes, sir, I was.
Who was that?
I believe it was a secretary from Mr. Sneddon's office.
And what was that discussion about?
When I was supposed to be down here and how to get to Santa Maria.
How many meetings have you had with any representative of the sheriff's department in total to talk about your testimony?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as vague as to time, a time period.
I'll rephrase it.
All right.
In the last year, how many meetings have you had with anyone representing the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department to talk about this case?
I haven't, sir.
How about phone calls?
No, sir.
All right, you're aware of Mr. Jackson going on tour. Excuse me. Let me rephrase it. You're aware that Mr. Jackson periodically went on tour while you worked at Neverland, true?
Yes, sir.
And it was your understanding he always had bodyguards with him, correct, on tour?
I understood that. Yes, sir.
Okay. You knew he was extremely concerned about his security, right?
His bodyguard security or security on the ranch?
Well, Mr. Jackson was extremely concerned about security on the ranch, wasn't he?
I don't know, sir.
You don't know?
No, sir.
Even with these intruders, you're not sure if he was concerned?
Well, I'm sure he was concerned, but he was never there when we did apprehend them.
Okay. You knew he had concerns about his personal security when he went on tour, right?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And at all times that you worked on the ranch, you knew he had personal bodyguards when he went on tour, right?
When he went on tour, yes, sir.
You knew he had personal protection when he went other places for other reasons, true?
I assume so, sir. I don't know.
Do you remember complaining that Mr. Abdul got a raise when you didn't?
No, sir.
Never happened?
No.
When you left Neverland, you just stopped showing up for work, right?
Yes, sir.
You stopped showing up for work after you met with Attorney Ring, correct?
Probably so, yes, sir.
You were disappointed that you weren't getting more money from tabloids, weren't you?
No, sir.
Never complained to anybody about that?
No, sir.
The first incident you claim you saw Mr. Jackson improperly touch a young man was when?
I don't recall. Between 92 and 93, I believe. I'm not for certain.
Do you recall ever telling any representative of law enforcement the month or the year?
No, sir. I don't know.
And what shower are you claiming Mr. Jackson used when you say you looked in a shower and saw him acting inappropriately?
It was the outside restrooms by the rec room.
There were two of them, right?
2 restrooms?
Yes.
There was a women's and a men's room, I'm sorry.
And which one do you claim you saw Mr. Jackson in?
In the men's room, sir.
Had you seen him in that men's room before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. By the way, when you went to the Santa Barbara grand jury, you didn't tell them everything you said today, did you?
Yes, sir.
Everything?
Yes, sir.
Did you tell them everything you've told Mr. Sneddon?
Well, that one incident that I recalled I didn't. I didn't bring that up, no, sir.
How long were you in front of a Santa Barbara grand jury?
Could have been a couple hours.
And at some point, you called to see if anybody had charged Mr. Jackson with anything, didn't you?
No, sir.
Never asked anyone?
No, sir.
Never asked anyone in the sheriff's department?
No, sir.
Never asked Mr. Sneddon?
No, sir.
To this day you've never asked that question, right?
No, sir.
All right. When did you first learn Blanca Francia had sold a story to hard copy?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. That question has been asked and answered, and that assumes facts not in evidence.
I'll rephrase it.
All right.
Did you ever learn that Blanca Francia had told a story for $20,000 to the TV show Hard Copy?
No.
Object. Asked and answered.
All right. He answered it. It's no. Next question.
Did you ever learn she had sold a story to Hard Copy, without knowing the amount she got?
Yes, sir.
When did you learn that?
Probably on the news.
On the news when?
I don't recall, sir. It was public knowledge.
Did you see the show?
No, sir.
Did you hear about it right after it appeared on television?
No, sir.
Were you employed when that was on television?
No, sir.
Where were you working at that point?
Where was I working? That's a good question. I believe I was already in Nevada by that time.
And what were you doing there?
I was a substitute teacher at a high school and junior high.
What year was this?
96, 7, 8.
Do you remember learning that security guards at the Jackson home in Encino had sold stories for $100,000?
No, sir, I didn't know anything about that place.
Never heard anything about that?
Well, I know they had security guards, but I never heard anything.
Did you hear anything about security guards at the Encino home selling a story for $100,000?
No, sir.
All right. Ever know someone named Quindoy?
I want to say that the Quindoys, I believe they were chefs, but I'm not positive.
They were what?
I believe they were cooks or chefs there at some property.
Did you know them?
No, sir.
Ever talk to them?
No, sir.
Did you know they had tried to sell stories to tabloids about Mr. Jackson?
No, sir.
Had you ever heard anything about that as you sit here today?
Probably have, but I don't recall.
Okay. Now, at some point you claimed you were improperly subjected to electronic surveillance at Neverland, right?
Could you be a little bit more specific, sir?
Sure.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I'm going to object because of the 403 ruling, but more specifically because there are multiple defendants in the causes of action. It may be different as to different individuals.
I'm only talking about him, Your Honor. His claims against Mr. Jackson.
I'm going to allow the question, but I'm going to do so assuming it's not related to specific allegations in the complaint, which I already said you can't directly go into.
Okay, well, there were such claims, Your Honor.
I know, but we're not relitigating that issue. But he could have made a claim or his attorney could have made a claim. You're asking him not about claims his attorney made, but claims that he made.
Yes, I am.
I'm going to allow the question with that understanding.
Thank you, Your Honor.
But you probably have to read it back to him. Do you remember the question?
I can rephrase it.
No.
I'll withdraw it. Do you remember claiming that you were emotionally distressed because you thought your telephone conversations were listened into at Neverland?
Yes, sir.
And you never knew whether or not there was a tap on any phone, correct?
Yes, I did, sir.
Are you saying you did know there was a tap?
Yes, sir, I knew that they had equipment where they were listening in.
Do you remember testifying under oath you didn't know if your phone was tapped?
At home or at the ranch, sir?
Either place.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever state under oath you didn't know whether your phone was tapped?
Your Honor, I object to the question as vague as to place.
Sustained.
You claim you had been emotionally damaged because someone listened into your calls at Neverland, right?
Emotionally damaged. Well, I probably didn't say that. But I was upset because they were listening to my personal phone calls, sir.
Okay, and your basis for saying that was that somebody had told you that was going on, right?
No, sir, I knew it was going on.
You had no knowledge of electronic surveillance at the time, did you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you have a check done on the phones?
No, sir.
When is the last time you talked to any tabloid about this case?
I have not, sir.
You haven't?
I haven't talked to anyone.
Are you planning to go to a tabloid after you testify?
No, sir, I just want to go home.
Did you make a complaint that your employee file was unfairly looked at Neverland?
Yes, sir.
And who did you think had unfairly looked at your employee file?
The OSS, sir.
That's Mr. Jackson's personal security guards?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any idea why they were suspicious of you?
No, sir.
They were, weren't they?
I don't know, sir.
Did you ever talk to them about why they wanted to see what was in your personnel file?
Yes, I approached them.
This was around the time you went to a tabloid, wasn't it?
No, sir.
This was around the time you went to Mr. Ring, wasn't it?
No, sir.
It was very close to the time you left employment at Neverland, wasn't it?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Do you remember saying you thought Mr. Jackson should compensate you for the rest of your life?
No, sir.
Would it refresh your recollection to show you your deposition transcript?
Yes, sir.
May I approach?
Yes.
Where is the beginning? Oh, I must have, sir.
Have you had a chance to look at that page in your deposition?
Yes, sir.
Does it refresh your recollection that you testified under oath that you thought Mr. Jackson should compensate you for the rest of your life?
I must have said that. Yes, sir, because it's on there.
Now, was it the policy at Neverland to notify the local sheriffs if an intruder was caught on the property?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Did you personally notify the sheriffs at any time about an intruder being on the property?
No, sir.
Do you recall you personally apprehending any intruders?
Myself and Abdul, yes, sir.
And what happened?
There was an intruder that came behind the pool area. It was a reporter, and we just apprehended him and took him down to the front gate, and probably the security at the gate called the sheriffs.
The pool area is right next to Mr. Jackson's house, isn't it?
Around the area, yes, sir.
And how many people did you apprehend on that occasion?
One, sir.
How far did that intruder have to travel to get to the pool area?
I don't know which direction he came in, sir. Could have been a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles. I don't know, sir.
And you also were involved in some other situations where intruders tried to get to Mr. Jackson, correct?
Yes, sir.
And please describe those events.
Kind of vague, but I believe there was two young people, a male and a female, I believe, and they were up by the theater.
The theater would be up near the zoo area?
Yes, sir.
And who caught them?
I believe it was Mobile. I don't know who it was that was on Mobile that night, but it was Mobile Patrol.
Did you ever steal a watch from Mr. Jackson?
No, sir.
Were you ever accused of that?
No, sir.
You mentioned candy bars earlier, remember?
Yes, sir.
Do you think the jury awarded Mr. Jackson $25,000 against you because you took candy bars?
That's what.
I'm going to object as argumentative.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes. All right, let's go back just for a second. Mr. Chacon, were you subpoenaed to be here this morning?
Yes, sir.
You're under subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Did you want to come testify?
No, sir.
When you testified before the grand jury, were you under subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Did you want to testify?
No, sir.
Prior to your appearance before the grand jury, you told the ladies and gentlemen that you met with attorneys for Mr. Jackson. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And with regard to that conversation, did they want to know what you were going to say?
They did.
And what did you tell them?
I said that I got subpoenaed, and if I got subpoenaed, that I would just speak the truth, but I didn't tell them what I knew, but they wanted to know.
They wanted to know, but you wouldn't tell them?
Yes, sir.
But you told them you were going to tell the grand jury the truth?
Yes, sir.
And did you do that?
Yes, sir.
Now, with regard to Mr. Mesereau saying that you added something to the events that occurred yesterday when you and I were talking, do you recall him asking you that question?
Yes, sir.
The new information you provided yesterday had nothing to do with the two events you've described to the jury, had they?
No, sir.
There was nothing that changed about that, was there?
No, sir.
In fact, the event that you indicated, there was something that you remembered was something you were told by another person. Wasn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And who was that other person?
Abdul.
It was in no way connected to the testimony you gave concerning the two incidents you observed?
No, sir.
Now, with regard, just so the jury has a clear indication of the sequence here, you were subpoenaed to appear before the Santa Barbara County Grand Jury, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you actually gave your statement under oath, was there a line of jurors like this in the room?
Back in
94, when you came in.
Yes, sir.
Now, how long after that was it that Mr. Ring became involved in the civil lawsuit? Let me put it this way. After you appeared before the Santa Barbara Grand Jury and gave a statement under oath, do you recall that?
Oh, yes, sir.
And you went back to work at the ranch, did you not?
Yes, sir.
And you worked at the ranch, Neverland Valley Ranch, for a while before you left there, correct?
Probably a month or so, or two. I'm not positive.
Was it at that point that you became involved in the lawsuit with Mr. Ring?
Yes, sir.
Whose idea was it to go to the tabloid for the story?
Well, we probably talked about it, but we talked to Mr. Ring about it. I guess it was all of us in general.
After you, Mr. Mesereau asked you about your salary at the ranch. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And you spoke about being dissatisfied with the wages that you were getting.
Yes, sir.
Compared to some people that had been hired afterward, correct?
Yes, sir.
After your conversations with Mr. Sanger and Steve Cochran about your grand jury appearance, were you offered a raise?
Yes, sir, I was.
And it was before your testimony actually occurred before the grand jury, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it was in between the time they found out you were going and the time that you actually appeared they offered you a raise?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Kassem also, right?
Yes, sir.
Actually, it's Mr. Abdul.
Yes, sir.
Now, during the course of let me ask you this. After you testified before the grand jury and gave your statement under oath about what you saw happen on those two incidents, okay? Did you receive threats?
Oh, yes, sir.
In what form?
Objection. Beyond the scope.
Sustained.
Judge, it's what led to the lawsuit. And counsel was allowed to go into that.
All right. With that representation, I'll change my ruling.
Could you?
Yes. You said you were threatened. In what form?
Verbally, and, well, verbally, and somewhat physically by someone touching Tony Coleman touching his weapon.
Tony Coleman was who?
He was us.
All right. Would you describe to the jury? If you have to stand up, do it. Describe to the jury what Mr. Coleman did.
We were in the security office, and we were arguing about an intruder that came in, and he wanted to do it his way. And I said, if you do it that way, we're going to, it's not the procedure. And then he says, well, I'm going to do it my way because I'm here to oversee you. And he pulled his coat back and he touched his weapon, and he says, I'm in charge here. I believe that's the words he used.
Did he at any other time ever use his weapon to indicate a threat towards you?
No, sir, that was about the first time.
Did you ever receive any phone calls of any kind that were threatening?
Yes, sir.
Did you report those to law enforcement?
Yes, I did, sir.
How many occasions did that occur?
Several times. One time when we first started, somebody says.
Objection. Non-responsive.
After several times, sustained.
All right. Tell us about those threats that you received.
The first time I received it, they said, I'm going to kill you.
Objection. Hearsay.
Your Honor, goes to the state of mind and to the reason for the lawsuit.
I'm going to overrule the objection as to state of mind.
Go ahead.
Someone called and said, I'm going to kill you, and hung up. And then other times we had calls at the house where they would either laugh or wouldn't say words, but we knew that someone was. I believe it was us behind this.
Did you as a result, did you take these things seriously?
Oh, yes, sir.
Did you approach anyone with regard to obtaining a gun permit?
Yes, sir.
And who did you approach?
I asked Mr. Burchim and yourself for a gun permit. So I carried a concealed weapon permit for about 2 years, I believe it was.
You indicated that you may have asked Sergeant or now Commander Burchim for money for your wife.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall? Do you remember why that was?
Yes, sir.
Why was that?
Well, my wife's sister-in-law had just died, and...
That's all right, I'll withdraw the question. That's okay. It's not important. Mr. Mesereau asked you about. We'll turn to a subject a little easier, about my conversation with you yesterday.
Yes, sir.
With Mr. Burchim being there.
Yes, sir.
And you told Mr. Mesereau how long the conversation lasted, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was Mr. Burchim present during the entire conversation?
Yes, he was.
Were there portions of time before Mr. Burchim got there that you and I talked a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Did we talk about anything about this case?
No, sir. We talked about my military experience, and that you knew some people that I knew where I was born and raised.
Had nothing to do with the case during the time Burchim wasn't there?
No, sir.
Objection. Asked and answered.
No, sir.
Now, when we were talking yesterday.
Sustained. Go ahead. Laughter.
When we were talking yesterday and Mr. Mesereau asked you, did I tell you what questions I was going to ask you today? Do you recall him asking you that question?
Yes, sir.
What was the question that I actually asked you? Do you remember?
I believe it was the incidents that took place, the 2 incidents that happened on the ranch.
And I asked you just to describe them in your own words to me?
Yes, sir.
And Sergeant, or Commander Burchim was there during that entire time?
Yes, he was.
Mr. Mesereau mentioned something about an individual called Victor Gutierrez. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
Were you ever paid any money by Mr. Gutierrez?
No, sir.
Did you ever give him a statement at all?
No, sir.
You indicated that the individuals who were on the ranch that were armed were called the OSS. Was that their official name, or was that a name that the security staff gave them?
I believe it was used for them as a short title. Office of Special Services, but they used it as, just call them OSS.
And with regard to, you told the jury that they interfered with you on how you did your job. In what respect? I mean, what was the tension or the friction between the 2 of you?
They just interfered in every aspect of our duty as security there. They would break the beams, the security beams, and they would cause us to run out there thinking it was an intruder. They would come by and laugh, and just make jokes, and or sit out in their vehicle and stare at us inside the security office.
With regard to the lawsuit itself that Mr. Mesereau has asked you a number of questions about, were you ever consulted about the amount of money that was going to be sued for?
No, sir.
Whose judgment did you leave that decision?
Mr. Ring.
Did you feel, yourself, that you were entitled to some money from Mr. Jackson because of the way you were treated on the ranch?
Yes, sir.
Do you still feel that way?
Yes, sir.
Objection. Move to strike. Relevance.
Sustained. Stricken.
You told the jury that you knew that your telephones on the ranch were being monitored, correct?
Yes, sir.
How did you know that?
It was common knowledge that, in the main office where Sandy Doms worked at, there was a computer paper printout that you could hear, and it printed out the phone calls as they were made, either going out or coming in.
Now, just a couple of more questions. With regard to the lawsuit, the trial, the civil lawsuit, were you, or did you, during that lawsuit, were you allowed or permitted to testify concerning the incidents you told this jury about this morning in that lawsuit?
No, sir. As a matter of fact, the judge said if we.
You just weren't allowed to?
No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chacon, is there anything that you've told this jury this morning about what you saw out there on those 2 incidents that is anything but the truth?
It's the truth, sir.
No further questions.
Mr. Chacon, the prosecutor has just asked you to talk about problems you had with the OSS, right?
Yes, sir.
And the OSS was a nickname someone developed to call Mr. Jackson's personal bodyguards?
They themselves, sir.
You wanted money to be awarded to you from a Santa Maria jury because of your problems with the personal security guards of Mr. Jackson, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your claims were rejected, true?
Yes, sir.
You also claimed at the time $16 million wasn't enough for you, right?
I probably did, sir. Yes, sir.
The prosecutor just asked you if you knew anything about the amounts you were seeking, and of course you did, right?
Yes, sir.
You wanted money because you claim that people were calling your home and hanging up, correct?
That was part of it, sir. Yes, sir.
And a Santa Maria jury rejected that claim, correct?
Yes, sir.
You said that someone named Coleman had put his hand on his gun because he didn't like the way you wanted to handle an intruder. Is that correct?
No, because he wanted to handle it.
He was a personal security guard, correct?
OSS. Not a security guard.
He was carrying this group you call the OSS. They're bodyguards for Mr. Jackson, right?
Yes, sir, they are.
And they were carrying weapons, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he was concerned about the intruder, correct?
No, sir.
You sued also claiming you should get money because of what Mr. Coleman did on that day, correct?
He threatened me, yes, sir.
And that was rejected by a Santa Maria jury as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you wanted money because you said Mr. Jackson stared at you on occasion, correct?
No, sir.
Why did you say it?
Just to say it.
No further questions.
No questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. Call your next witness.
Call Adrian McManus to the stand.
Come to the front of the courtroom, please. When you get to the witness stand, please remain standing. Face the clerk over here and raise your right hand.
Yes. Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
Adrian Marie McManus. Adrian Marie McManus.
Thank you.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Ms. McManus, good morning.
Good morning.
Without telling us the location or the name of where you're working, describe the kind of work you're currently doing.
I work in a jewelry department where I sell diamonds.
Is this a department store?
Yes, sir.
Is it in the Santa Maria area?
Yes.
How long have you been working at that department store?
7 years in July.
You work in the diamond department, do you?
Yes.
All right. There is such a thing as a diamond department?
Yes.
They sell raw diamonds or finished diamonds or jewelry.
Fine diamonds, jewelry.
All right.
It's actually a lot of diamonds.
Okay. Have you worked in that department the entire time?
No.
Have you worked in other departments in that store as well?
Yes.
Prior to that, what kind of work were you doing?
I was a merchandise assistant for the cosmetic department.
At the same store?
Yes.
For what period of time?
Probably the beginning of my employment. Maybe about 4 years.
And prior to that, what kind of work were you doing?
Do you mean like after that or before that?
Before working with this store.
I worked for Sears, and I was in the cosmetic department.
Did you ever work for Michael Jackson?
Yes.
Do you see Michael Jackson in this courtroom?
I don't have my glasses. I forgot them upstairs.
How far can you see?
I can't see real far.
Can you see me?
Yeah, blurry.
I won't ask that question, then. Can you read, in the event we need to show you some documents?
No, I need to get my glasses.
We're going to have a break in a few minutes. I'll reserve all those questions until we have that break. You did work for Michael Jackson at some point, did you not?
Yes.
For what period of time did you work for Michael Jackson?
From, I think, August 29th of 1990 through July 31st of 1994.
In what capacity? What kind of work did you do for Mr. Jackson?
At the beginning I was just a maid, regular housekeeper. 9 months later I was cleaning his bedroom.
And did you continue that job for the duration of your employment?
Yes.
Were you the only person cleaning his bedroom?
Yes.
Tell me how that worked. Why were there not other people involved in cleaning his bedroom as well?
Objection. Foundation.
Sustained.
What were you told about who would be cleaning his bedroom?
I was just told that I was flexible and that I was the one to clean his bedroom.
And that was that entire time after a few months after you commenced working for Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
So it was early, 91?
I just know it was 9 months after, because I started in 90, and
Now, up to that point, you were responsible for cleaning other locations at Neverland, is that correct?
yes.
What were those other locations? Tell us what your job included.
Before that time?
Yes.
Cleaning the rec room, the ranch house, the guest units, the hill house, the main house, except his bedroom at that time.
Do you know who the person was who was responsible for cleaning his bedroom before you?
Blanca Francia.
And did you know Blanca Francia?
Yes.
Were you the one who took over that job when she left?
Yes.
Did you take over that job as soon as she left?
Yes.
Describe to us what those responsibilities included. Cleaning.
Let's take a break.